All right, everybody, we're gonna gear up again. Here's a couple, I'll put this in the chat. Here's a couple ways you might apply the first session. One is you could ask which of the 7 principles in the Gottman research is our strength and which is our weakness. Tim talked about those, and maybe that's a way forward if you want to read the book together. Which of the 7 principles in the Gottman research is our strength and which is our weakness? We often think we got to start at chapter 1 in a book, but that's not the case. Maybe you start with the 4th principle. So that's one way you might do. And in terms of mission, you might just start praying together as a couple and saying, Lord, what is the mission that you have for us? That has us looking beyond our own marriage, beyond our own family, and is thinking about our neighborhood or our workplace or the church. What is our mission that you want to give us together? Okay. Tim, you're about to start us off on our second session.
Right.
On marriage dreams. So take her away.
All right. So the second part of what we're going to be looking at today has to do with probably what I think is the main thing that brings couples into marital therapy, and that is those pesky issues you never seem to be able to resolve. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about. You know, the thing is, hardly anybody ever comes to marital therapy because their marriage is super cool and groovy. Usually folks come because there's something going on that they want to work on. I'm going to give a gallery view. There we go. Something that they want to work on or something that they want to be able to resolve. So the secret to a satisfying marriage, one of the secrets to a satisfying marriage is the art of what I call overcoming gridlock. Overcoming gridlock. You know, gridlock is that place where you get where whenever you start to have that same, you ever had that same argument over and over again, you think, oh my gosh, here we are, you know, we're in our 50s or 60s or our 40s or whatever you are. We've been together for all these years. Why do we keep arguing about the same thing? It just never tends to go away. Why? That's called a gridlock issue. It's because you think to yourself, my gosh, we're 2 intelligent people, or at least one of us is. And why can't we solve this problem? And so we think that the answer to overcoming gridlock is getting better at solving problems. We've just been led to believe that. I want to say, I think that the key to overcoming gridlock, if we could expand our, repertoire a little bit, if we could expand our minds a little bit, the key to overcoming gridlock, I think, is in discovering the dreams we have for marriage. And sometimes those dreams are inseparably linked to the dreams we have about life in general. And so, when we marry, most of us get together and we're not consciously mindful of the dreams we have in life. I mean, I remember when I look back on meeting Terry, I was not consciously saying to myself, this is the girl who will help me realize my dreams in life. I never thought that. I was crazy about her and, super attracted. We had a lot of friends. It was a lot of reasons that we were attracted. I didn't realize back then that it was that deep down inside, I had this dream in life and she was the perfect, complement to the dream I had. I did not realize back then what my dream was. I now realize what my dream has been all along in life. My dream is freedom. I didn't grow up in an awful family, but I grew up not being able to wait to grow up and get, out on my own and become free. I don't know where our dreams necessarily come from. Maybe God gives us our dreams sometimes because he wants to use us in a particular, area of the world or of life. But my dream has always been freedom, and I'm super clear about it now. And you can look at me and you can go, well, that makes total sense. I haven't held down a real job in 30 some years. I mean, I'm in private practice, so I don't have anybody that I have to answer to really, other than the, state government. But I work for a church, but I work part-time. So, I'm kind of hard to pin down. So, I mean, I've always had this problem. I've always wanted freedom, and I don't do well if I have work in what I would refer to as a, sort of, repressive or oppressive environment where I actually had to have like a boss, you know. So those are my issues, but we're not here for those. So anyway, but I do think that the key to overcoming gridlock has to do with discovering what our dreams are, because I think they're inseparably linked to who we are with. So, like I said, we're not often very mindful of what those dreams are, but our deepest dreams, I believe, are oftentimes rooted in childhood. And a lot of people, when I start talking about this, they go, "Oh yeah, now I see what you're talking about." So, what do I mean by that? There's at least two different aspects of childhood that I think lead us to develop our dreams for life and our dreams for marriage. One is a lot of us have warm memories of our childhood, and those warm memories have really impacted us, and they've become important to us, and so they inspire us to want to recreate that warmth in the family that we're beginning and in our marriage. And so, and that could include things like rituals and traditions that may have given you value and comfort when you were growing up in life. That could fuel your dream for life. Some people's dreams in life are fueled, on the other hand, by the need to get as far away from some things that happened in childhood as possible. And so that dream comes, in sort of opposition to what you experienced in childhood. And you need new memories because you want to overcome, and you want to even maybe forget some of the things that you had to deal with in childhood. And so your dreams are all, about changing your life and turning things around and creating something new and life-giving. So I think what we do is, consciously or unconsciously, I think we marry to fulfill our dreams in life. And when I talk about common dreams, people say, "Okay, Tim, what do you mean by dreams?" And when I ask people let's talk a little bit about your dreams. So a lot of times folks tend to, in our culture, identify what look more like goals than dreams. So, because we're kind of we love specificity, we love practicality. And so I think, when somebody says, what's your dream in life? I had this one person talk about, this dream to live in a certain place. People have dreams about that kind of stuff. And for example, you may have a dream to live in somewhere exotic, like maybe to have a house at the beach, or in Davis. Many people fantasize about living in Davis. Those are dreams that people have. But those are not necessarily dreams. Those are more goals. My question would be, what's the dream beneath that? What is it in people to make us so want to live by the beach, or to make us so want to live in Davis? What is it about that kind of just creates a dream for us? And so some of the common dreams that have been expressed by couples, I think some of these may be in your notes, but a sense of freedom. I mean, that's been my dream for years, as to be able to feel free. Feeling at peace. The dream of exploring who I am. I've had a lot of clients who land on their dream is adventure. A sense of family togetherness. That, for example, that's my wife Terry's. That's her dream in life, is family togetherness. And so, it's interesting because I have a dream, she has a dream. And so the goal of our marriage has now become, how do we merge our dreams? And I'm going to be talking a little bit about how that happens later on. But oftentimes you marry someone with a totally different dream, and that's not a disconnect. That is an opportunity to create a dream together. And we spend tons of time, when Scott was talking in the intro about how Terry and I love to go out and go out to dinner, for example. Going out to dinner that's a platform for us to dream. We'll go to some place where we love the food, and we love maybe even the wait staff, because we've been there so many times they kind of know where. And so we'll sit there for the longest time. We won't even order our whole meal. We'll just order things one at a time, because we want to stretch the time out so that that's where we dream. we could do this, and then we could do that. And so that's where you work at merging your dreams. Like I said, my dream is freedom. Her dream is family togetherness. In fact, when the kids were growing up, it was funny because our kids would always ask Terry around Mother's Day or her birthday, or, Mom, what do you want for your birthday? And then they wouldn't even give her the opportunity to answer because they already knew what the answer was. Then they'd look at each other and they'd say, all I want is to have the family together, because that was Terry's answer to that question. She just wanted everybody to be together and have a nice time. Family togetherness, big, and that came out of a childhood where she experienced a lot of that. See, so a sense of family togetherness, a sense of power. You may have grown up feeling empowered, and that continues on to be your dream today. Or maybe you grew up feeling powerless, and a sense of power is what your dream is. Maybe exploring your creative side. Some people dream of just getting forgiveness from God, getting over past hurts. And maybe as I've mentioned this, it might prime the pump for you to even begin to think about what your dreams are. One of the ways that you value that dream is by simply discovering what it is, identifying it. And you may even decide, you may even identify and go, man, I see that dream as coming straight from God. Because you see, I think God gives people dreams because God's got actually, I don't know if you know this, God's got a bigger plan out there. And when he gives human beings dreams and we achieve them, the kingdom moves forward. And so your dream may be actually linked to something God wants to do. In fact, there's no maybe about it. And so valuing my dream by discovering it. Secondly, by choosing that I'm going to value my spouse's dream and I'm going to get as familiar with it as I possibly can. And I'm going to become a student of it. Dr. Gottman calls this becoming a dream detective. He says, satisfied couples are couples in which the partners are they're detectives. They just want to find out more, as much as they can, about their spouse's dreams. Growing to the point, idea is we grow to the point where we figure out ways to merge our dreams and express a commitment to seeing those dreams come true. You see, it matters to Terry that I value that dream of hers of family togetherness. It's a little hard now because we have one kid that lives in Santa Barbara. The other kids live in Barcelona. And so that's a little more of a challenge for us than it was back in the day. But that's still her dream. So growing to a point where we merge our dreams and express a commitment to seeing those dreams come true. Seeing them as a process that get nurtured together by talking and strategizing and fantasizing together about those dreams. And that's, for us, like I said, the platform is our date night. Back when people had date nights, when you actually could go out. Now we just sit around our own fireplace and do that now. So gridlock is this experience in your relationship where you just can't seem to come together or to find closure on a specific issue or problem. And oftentimes it's when we argue about the same things, like I said, over and over again, and we start to get discouraged. Having an unresolved issue can just start to drain you, because most of us have been brought up to think problems are solvable. And what's wrong with you if you can't solve the problem? Gridlock is oftentimes a sign in marriage of unacknowledged or unrespected dreams. And we fight battles. In other words, the issues that we start arguing about, turns out, may not really be the issue. The issue may be that they're emblematic. The issues we argue about are more emblematic of unresolved dreams, unacknowledged, unrespected dreams. A dream, for example, some people express a dream, it's kind of more of a goal, but a dream of having a margin of savings in the bank, and inspired by either by that reality or the presence all along of margin, or maybe you grew up feeling insecure and scared because you had a scarcity experience as a child, but your dream has become having a margin of safety. And you've been left feeling insecure or scared. That's where that dream came from. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, one of the things we realized in the Gottman research is that there are actually two kinds of marital problems, only two kinds, solvable and perpetual. And solvable problems are solvable. Those are problems that you can negotiate out, like, who should be responsible for taking the trash out, or, there are issues that we could look at and we can negotiate pretty easily to some sort of compromise. Those are very different from the issues that you've had, the arguments you've had, the same ones over and over and over again, some of you maybe for 30, 40 years. You think, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting so much energy? Once you realize it's unsolvable, you kind of go, phew, why should we waste this time trying to solve an unsolvable perpetual problem? What if we could realize that it really has more to do with unconnected dreams that aren't being realized? And so I think there's 3 steps to take when we want to deal with this and kind of get at that. Step number 1 is, I think we should nurture our fondness and admiration for each other. That's step number 2 in the Gottman principles. The more we work at nurturing fondness and admiration for each other, for example, doing the date nights, getting involved in a ministry that we share together, the things that wind up working for us, the more we do those, the more it tends to minimize or kind of shrink on the screen of your life the problems that you can get bogged down in. It tends to minimize those problems because you're reminding yourself, okay, there's this thing we argue about, but man, by and large, this is a great partner for me. I mean, we get, and you start to list in your mind all the things that are just working so well about this relationship. See, what happens is when people lose that perspective, I use this term with a lot of my clients, I call it zooming. And that is that I think sometimes in life, we can become so zoomed in, so focused on a problem or so focused on something that we almost can get obsessive about it, and have you ever had this experience where you wake up in the middle of the night and it occurs to you, one of the problems you're trying to deal with occur to you, and you start to obsess on it. It's middle of the night, it's dark, it's like 3 a.m. You should be getting a good night's sleep, but you start to obsess about this problem. Anybody? Well, maybe just Presbyterians. Okay, so, but I'm doing this and I'm thinking, and the more you think about it, the bigger it becomes. That's because all alone in the middle of the night, in the dark, my Zoom lens is completely zoomed in on this problem. But then have you ever gotten up in the morning after you've had that experience, those of you who have, you get up in the morning and you go, why was I so worried about that? I mean, this is not that big of a deal. I can handle this. Or there's somewhere I can go or someone I can ask. We can deal with this. And you realize that was so dumb that I was so obsessed with this thing in the middle of the night. That's because oftentimes our Zoom gets stuck. You can get stuck, zoomed in on something, and you lose perspective. And so, being able to nurture fondness and admiration, that's a way of zooming out and saying, okay, you know what? We're arguing about this dumb thing here, but basically I'm nuts about this person. Or I have been nuts about this person before. What was it that I was nuts about? And I want to get in touch with that again. So that's step number 1, nurture fondness and admiration. Step number 2, I want to discover which dreams are being hindered by the thing that we're arguing about. Which dreams are being hindered by the thing that we're arguing about? In other words, what's this dream that I have? Let's say my dream is freedom. This thing we're arguing about, how is it connected to my dream of freedom? For somebody, if your dream is freedom, and maybe there's debt piling up, or maybe whatever. There's some sort of problem going on in your life that's impeding or inhibiting the dream from happening. But you wind up arguing about other stuff, thinking that that's the real issue. So it can be very helpful, even if you don't see the connection right now. Trust me on this, and if there's a gridlock issue in your life, talk more about dreams with each other than the problem, and see if your dreams aren't somehow connected to that. Terry's got this dream. Now that she's left, she went to do some errands. I could tell you this story. Terry has this dream about togetherness, right? Well, she's got this dream that we buy or rent a motorhome and drive across the US. I'm like, that doesn't feel like fun at all. I mean, can you imagine it being in a motorhome driving across Nevada? I mean, why not just fly to where you want to go? I mean, but she, her dream is all about togetherness, Mine's about freedom. I don't think I'd feel free in a motorhome. I think I'd feel like, oh my gosh, how do you park this thing? How do you drive this thing? I mean, to me, so if we were to get into, these big arguments about, what we're going to do for a vacation or what we're going to do, when we retire someday, if I don't focus on the fact that, hey, it's not about motorhomes necessarily. I mean, she really kind of wants to see the US, but part of it is because her family's done that before and she had a lot of fun doing that as a kid. If I can get into and wrap my mind around how it feels to be Terry and why that's such a big deal to her, I might even be able, I would rent it, I wouldn't buy it, but I might even be able to try the motorhome thing. I don't want anybody to tell her that I'm telling you that, but I might, because her dreams matter to me. I'd like to instead talk her into just flying someplace cool but you get my point, right? Okay. Third step. So nurture fondness and admiration so that you don't get stuck. So you can zoom out, nurture fun. Number 2, discover which dreams are actually being hindered by that thing that you're obsessively arguing about. Number 3, remember that nurturing the dream may be much more doable than solving the problem. You see, taking a ride in a motorhome may be much easier to actually accomplish than solving the problem you might be arguing about. As Dr. Gottman notes, and I think this note is in your outline, Gottman once said, a great deal of conflict springs from partners' inability to see how their lover's belief system is deeply tied to their innermost dreams. I think that's fascinating. We can get so stuck on our own dreams, or we can get stuck on wanting to make sure that our partner's dreams don't come true because we don't want to do it. We don't want to do the drive across Nevada. That, we can fail to see what our partner's dreams really are. Also, another quote from Gottman. He says, when partners aren't compromising in their essential conflicts, it's because they feel as if the compromise may mean giving up a core part of themselves. In other words, if I compromise and I go and I get into your, belief system, we have all this conflict because I feel I'm unable to see from your standpoint, unable to see with your eyes or from your shoes they feel like they have to give up a part of themselves in order to do that. So Gottman suggests, like I mentioned before, become a dream detective. Focus on discovering what the dream that your spouse is. A lot of relationship conflict, he says, is rooted in unfulfilled dreams, feelings of frustration and resentment that we feel towards one another when the hopes and the goals for the future that we have go unrespected. And many couples come to therapy complaining that their problem, I've heard this so many times over the course of my career. People come, I say, well, how can I help you? And they say, well, we have a problem with communication. Now, and I don't want to take that away from them. I think as a culture, we're actually pretty adept at communicating. I don't think that really is the problem. I think people are missing the point. I think what's missing is understanding and empathizing. That's what's missing. We communicate actually quite well, but we struggle with emotional intelligence in marriage. We struggle to get to see the world in an empathic way from the other person's viewpoint. So to ensure that your dreams are being fulfilled, you've got to first understand what those dreams are. That's self-care. And once you grasp what your dreams are, you want to be ready to share them with your partner, articulate them. What are my dreams? And take some time to kind of zoom out and discover the dreams that you have for life and that your marriage, and consider the following questions. I put some, so I don't know if these made it into the outline or not. I may have come up with these later. Some of the following questions. Number one, what are my dreams? And what are the stories behind my dreams? What am I dreaming? What's my dream for the future? What's my dream for this relationship? And what's the story behind it? Another question, do I feel comfortable sharing my dreams with my spouse? Is our relationship in a place where we can say, hey, you know what, let's just sit down or go away or take a drive or whatever, take a walk. And I want to talk about what my dreams are. Have you done that? Do you do that? Are you comfortable doing that? Another question, what happens in our conversation when we try to communicate about our dreams? Do I feel heard? Sometimes we think, oh, well, if I really tune in to this conversation and begin to hear what your dreams are, I think it's gonna lead us right back to one of our problems that we argue about all the time. What if you put the arguing aside and just heard the dream? Do I truly listen to my spouse? Do we talk over each other? We start having a conversation. I was noticing this the other day with actually a family member I was talking to, and there was a third person that kind of came into the conversation. And this family member is just like talking over everybody. This person had something they really wanted to communicate, and it was like other people weren't being heard. Do I talk over? Lastly, is there room for improvement in the way I, talk about my dream? Is there room for improvement in my listening to my spouse's dreams? The whole idea that our conflicts are driven by unmet dreams is totally alien to most of us. Most of us are taught to very instinctively deal with conflict by sticking to a narrow field of facts. If we believe that there's a right and a wrong, or a winner and a loser has to emerge, conflicts become more difficult than they need to be. A lot of times what we wind up arguing about is really tied to an unmet dream. That's why, I'll say it for the third time, make a commitment to become a dream detective. We look below the surface of the gridlock that we have and try to discover what's really needed here. What are the sort of unmet dreams that are driving a lot of our conflict? Also, over time, our gridlock conflict oftentimes gets more painful because the environment in our relationship gets full of what Gottman refers to as negative sentiment. And if you were at the conference I did, I think it was like 3 years ago, I think I had this teaching tool where I had a couple of large vases. And in one vase, I put crystal clear water. And in the other vase, I just fill it with mud. And so I try to get people to think about your relationship. Your relationship, is it in positive or negative sentiment? And if it's in positive sentiment, then your relationship is like this vase that's full of clear, clean water. And it's just, there's clarity, it's awesome. And then this full of mud, that represents a relationship that's just full of negative sentiment. I mean, and Gottman says, how do you define negative versus positive sentiment? Well, it's kind of hard to do this, but one of the ways we measure it in the Love Lab up in Seattle is asking people, how many of your thoughts about your partner are positive versus negative? If you're in general, you have 5 1 ratio of negative to positive thoughts about your partner, you're in negative sentiment. In other words, you're more inclined to think negative thoughts, more inclined to filter, even in conversations, more inclined to filter it as negative than positive. So people want to know, basically what people are coming to counseling is they're saying, how do I get from negative sentiment in this relationship to positive sentiment? Well, it's not that easy, because, if you take, like, let's say, like a spoonful of that clear, clean water and you dump it into that mud, it really doesn't change much. But if you take, here's the cool thing about being in positive sentiment. If you take a teaspoon of that mud and put it into the clear, clean water, it just kind of dilutes. I mean, you notice it, but it doesn't change. It doesn't change the clarity really all that much, because you've got this bank account, in a sense. You've got all this positive sentiment going on. And so, negative sentiment conversations where people, that's called negative sentiment override, where, you can't even have conversations at times because you're just so full of resentment, so full of negative sentiment. And so people tend to try to get from negative sentiment to positive sentiment. Oftentimes they try to work through these things and try to have conversations and deal with their conflict by having conversations that really turn out to be quite harsh. And I just want to say that when it comes to harshness and negative sentiment, conversations when you're in negative sentiment, where you're using harshness, hardly ever, in fact, in 34 years of private practice, I've never seen someone have an escalating harsh conversation that's resolved itself. People don't have breakthroughs except in the movies, where you have some major argument about something and then somebody goes, "You're right. I was an idiot." It just doesn't happen. And so you've got to figure out how to get from, if you're in negative sentiment, you've got to figure out how to get into positive sentiment. This is why so many therapists, in my opinion, fail to have breakthroughs with their couples, because the couple comes in, they're in negative sentiment, and they get bogged down trying to get it all out. And it doesn't really wash it all away. Closure doesn't happen, because arguing and harshness and ventilating all your negative feelings is oftentimes a dead-end street. Harshness distances people. You don't ever have breakthroughs. Harshness doesn't ever lead. Psalm 15:1, talks about the harshness, in fact, that harshness never helps, but a gentle answer, says, that will turn away negativity. So what does it mean to become an emotionally intelligent couple? What if instead we started by acknowledging that there are two perspectives in our conflict, both are valid, but that they're rooted in unmet dreams rather than some less than loving obsession for power on my part? What if we could start there? So I want to wrap this with a few suggestions. First of all, for showing support, number one, ask questions about the dream. If you're having a discussion about, and you don't really quite understand, but your partner starts to reveal what their dream is, ask questions about dream. That's how you become a dream detective. What's the story behind this dream? Tell me the story behind this dream. The story behind Terry's dream of family togetherness being her dream was that she grew up loving to hang out with her family as a little girl. She was the oldest of 3 kids. They have 5 in the family. She loved the family vacations and the camping trips and all this kind of stuff. But the reality was that at times early on, the family was so poor that dad had to work like 3 jobs. Her dad had to work like 3 jobs in order to support the family. And so this thing that she had tasted and loved, this family togetherness, was in a really emergency short supply in their family life for years. And so I think that's what created this dream for her. She had a taste of this, but it was difficult to achieve later on. So that's why I think she came into marriage saying to herself, okay, I want a guy who will help me achieve this dream of family togetherness. And I thought it was a great idea until we started talking about motorhomes. But anyway, you got to work through some of that stuff. And I'm confident that we will. But so ask questions about the dream. Number two, offer empathy. Offer empathy. In other words, you don't have to be ecstatic about the person's dream. You don't have to say, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. I would love to drive across Nevada. If you don't really believe that. But you can offer empathy. You can say, I understand why this is so important to you. This whole idea of, getting in this vehicle and going on this trip. I get it. I get it. I've heard your story. I get it. Yeah, it makes total sense. We're going to have more discussions about it. Number three, offer emotional support and validation. I mean, even if you can't quite get there yet, one of the most powerful things you can do once you start articulating your dream or hearing your spouse's dream get articulated is to be able to say the words, I will get behind your dream 100%. Not sure how yet, but I'm going to get behind that dream. Next thing, participate in the other person's dream. Read about the issue, help them make plans, figure out a way to make this thing come true. Give support, whatever you need to do to make that happen. Join the dream on a trial basis, take a motorhome trip somewhere closer. I don't know. I'm not saying I've done that yet, but I mean, these are great ideas, right? Okay. Understanding each other's dreams, each other's hopes and desires for the future. It's one of the most rewarding experiences that we can have in a relationship, but it doesn't happen overnight. So I'm going to give you 4 things that I think you need to do in order to go from here to get there. And then we can take some questions if we still have some time. First thing I would suggest, determine whether or not you're in negative sentiment override currently. Determine whether you're in negative sentiment override currently. In other words, when I say that, basically we feel pretty good about this relationship. We may not have articulated all of our hopes and dreams for the future, but my thoughts about my spouse, 5 to 1 positive. Or, we're in a rough spot right now. And right now I think it's more 5 to 1 negative or somewhere, in between. Kind of figure out, are we in positive sentiment or negative sentiment as a couple? Secondly, decide that harshness never helps. To make a personal commitment that you're going to alleviate harshness from your life as a spouse, that you're going to do whatever it takes to become emotionally intelligent, to deal with your own anger issues or your own exasperation by self-soothing. Okay, let me tell you that one of the things I love about the Gottman book, if you buy it, is that the first 52 pages of the book, Gottman kind of gives an introduction to all the research, and he starts to use terms that you wouldn't be completely unfamiliar with, but you might not know what they mean in context of the research. The cool thing about the book too is that it's got an index in the back. And if you hear a term or a vocabulary word that Gottman uses and you go, I wonder what that means, you can look up and you can see every reference to it in the book. It's extremely helpful. So several of those vocabulary terms are, he talks about self-soothing. In other words, if you're having a discussion about dreams and stuff and you start to feel your pulse and your blood pressure go up, you want to deal with that before it gets to 100 beats a minute. Once your heart rate gets to 100 beats a minute, I'm telling you, you don't hear what the other person's saying. You're not going to have a functional conversation about it. And so you want to learn how to self-soothe, how to dial it back. That's what we call it in our family, dialing it back. You want to learn about another Gottman vocabulary term is called repair attempts. And those are very important. A lot of times we make repair attempts, but we don't even realize the value of them. And that's why it's really cool if you can realize, hey, you know what? That was a repair attempt you just made. What's a repair attempt? That's like some way that I reach out and go, hey, I'm sorry we had that discussion or that things kind of went south in that conversation. I love you. I want to see us work this out. A repair attempt is anything that you say or do that kind of wants to bring some reconciliation after you've had a kind of a little bit of brokenness. So it could be a touch, could be a look, could be humor, could be just words where you say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? So there's two parts to every repair attempt. You make the repair attempt, but the second part is receiving a repair attempt. And so be on the lookout when your spouse makes a repair attempt. How am I going to deal with this? Am I ready to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, thank you for that apology. I appreciate it. Let's have our discussion. Sometimes you won't feel like you're ready because maybe your pride got hurt, or it's going to take you a while for your heart rate to go back down from 190 beats a minute down to where you can actually look at this person, and see them and love them again. Sometimes it takes some time. So self-soothing, repair attempts. He uses another term called bids for connection. To be on the lookout for when your spouse is reaching out, making a bid to connect with you. Could be that text that your spouse sends you at a certain time every day. Could be, just a look that you give, or whatever. Bids for connection, nurturing fondness and admiration. Looking for that. Is your partner remembering and bring Terry lately? She sees something that I like. She'll buy it for me. She bought me this little gift the other day and brought it home. And it wasn't Christmas. In fact, it was right after Christmas. You don't really think about getting gifts then, but she saw this thing. She thought, I bet he'd really like that. She brought it home. That nurtures fondness and admiration. And I love that she thought about me while I was gone and brought that home. So learn the vocabulary of the masters of marriage, and that you learn that. You can learn a lot of that vocabulary from the Gottman book. Thirdly, discover your dream in marriage and your spouse's dream. Make a commitment that you're going to figure out what this is. And one of the things I suggest people do when they first start doing this, if they're a little unclear about how to even get at their dream, or they're afraid, okay, this dream is more like a goal. What is this dream really? If you get the Gottman book, one of the things I suggest is you can look up dreams in marriage in the back of the book, but you can also Google. I love Google. You can Google Gottman, Gottman, on dreams in marriage, and you'll see all kinds of articles that'll pop up by other writers and therapists that have made contributions to the field, and you can get some ideas about how to be creative in discovering your dream and your spouse's dream. Lastly, deal with the reality that unmet dreams will trigger disappointment. They will trigger conflict. They will trigger gridlock. And make a commitment to pursuing your dreams, finding out what your spouse's dreams are. Make a commitment to merging those dreams. Pray to become a Priscilla and Aquila marriage, that it's a partnership, where the church gets built up by realizing that marriage is greater than the sum of its parts. There is a ripple effect to your relationship in the world. And let's reduce the gridlock in our relationships by discovering that dreams in marriage can bring real joy and a fulfilling life together. I'll tell you, over the course of time, Terry and I, one of the best, most therapeutic things for our dreams, making our dreams come true, have been short-term mission trips for us. Neither of us, grew up doing short-term mission trips. It wasn't something that I was necessarily like, ooh, can't wait, to go on a short-term mission trip. I think that's why our missions director sent me to France for my first one. It was much easier to handle the idea of a mission trip going to France. But I'll tell you, once I went and, did a couple of these things, I was dying to go back. We had a blast together, and we really could see how, as a couple, we could make a contribution to some new growing churches by just teaching and being who we are. Well, that's all I got.
Thank you, Tim, so much for this gift you've given us this morning. Just so much to think about. And if I'm playing pastor, and I will for just a moment, I want to just encourage you all to thank you, Keith and Janet, for the applause. That's duly noted. I just want to encourage you as your pastor to take some time together as a couple sometime today. Don't let too much time lapse, and have some take a crack at chatting about some of these things and how you want to move forward and grow from it. Again, I think things are hard to learn from if we don't take a step of some sort. And so take a step, make it clear, have some accountability for it. You'll be a lot happier in the end run.